I'm a professional Maya animator for the last 12 years, working on huge video games and movies like Avengers and The Last of Us Part 2. And I'm trying Blender. I've tried Blender about every 3 to 6 months for 3 years, but I just find animating in Blender so frustrating. There's some things that are not very intuitive, especially coming from Maya, that you would expect to work one way and it just doesn't work. What in the heck? I can't explain that one. So if you have suggestions about how to fix the stuff that I'm running into, please comment below this video and let me know what I'm doing wrong and how I can improve. I'm always interested in learning new softwares, but for whatever reason, animating in Blender is just a constant struggle for me as a Maya animator. So I wanted to share some of those struggles when I just worked on this new shot, and I hope my perspective as a Maya animator going into Blender gives you some perspective on the challenges that other Maya animators might see and maybe ways that Blender could be improved. I am a member of the Blender Studio thing. I've actually created a couple courses in Blender myself, but animating in Blender I just find so frustrating. So let me know what your thoughts are below, and I look forward to hearing your suggestions so that I can improve animating in Blender. Let's get going. So first things first, I'm using a model from Mechabricks, and I'm using the Epic Fig Rig plugin here to rig it and get animating. The first thing that I struggled with was the modes. You know, you can't just start animating. You have to be in a certain mode to animate, but you can't even get into that mode unless you have a controller selected, and then that mode becomes available to, see, I can't even select this thing. How do I select this dang thing again? Oh, I'm in edit mode. I got to get out of edit mode, get into object mode, then select this, and then I can go into pose mode, and now I can start animating. If I wanted to adjust the environment model I did here again, then I couldn't. I'm gonna have to go back and change the mode again, go to object mode, select it, and then go to edit mode. So I have to go through 3 different modes every time I want to do something, and it's just, you don't have any of this in Maya. None of these modes exist besides object and component, and that's just for modeling stuff. There's no animation mode or pose mode in Maya. You just move the thing that you want to animate. So managing the modes while getting the environment for this visual effects scene set up was fairly frustrating. I did like how, you know, there's the shadow catcher that's just fairly easy here for, oh, but see, I can't click this to show you the shadow catcher thing because I have to go back to the other mode out of pose mode. Okay, let's stay in pose mode. So I'm in pose mode. I converted all of the hotkeys here to the typical Maya one so that I could a bit more intuitively go through this, because I just, my head can't get wrapped around the hit G, then middle mouse drag to isolate, or cancel out of this, hit escape, I guess. There's just, I think I need to spend more time with it, but I'm a manipulator guy. I want to be able to just grab a thing and move it, and middle mouse clicking and then kind of guessing where it's going, or, getting stuck on an axis is just so frustrating. It's so unnecessary, it seems to me. So I'm glad the gizmos are here and that I can change the hotkeys and I can somewhat work relatively to like what I'm used to working. The other thing that I ran into was just managing the graph editor, which is where I like to work. And the main issue I had here was if I can select a controller that has some keys here, I'm gonna turn this on because I hid this earlier. For some reason, when I was using a plane for the shadow here, it still listed the rig in the graph editor along with the plane, even though I didn't have the rig selected. So I ended up having to close this down so that I wasn't seeing the graph editor keys from something I didn't have selected. So that was another thing. Maybe I can do that real quick. So if I go to object mode, I select this. Notice how this still has the rig here. And I was trying to animate this plane, and for some reason, the rig is still in the graph editor, but I don't have it selected. So why would it ever be there? I don't understand that. So I had to hide it because I was trying to animate the plane to match the bus moving so that the shadow of the bus would get removed from the character correctly. But anyway, so that's why that was hidden. You can see how that just in my experience, I'm just having to like manage so many things that I'm not used to managing that just gets in the way of animating. So I have pose mode selected. Let me select that control that has some keys on it. I'm not sure why these are grayed out. Let me toggle this down so we can see the axes and attributes here. So this is another frustrating thing. In Maya, when I select these, not only does it highlight them in the graph editor, it hides everything else. So I just immediately can isolate and see exactly the curve that I want to see. But here, that's not possible. I would have to go through and untick all of these other things just to see the curve that I want to be messing with. And another thing that I found kind of frustrating was if I control middle mouse click to zoom in vertically on this, and so I have my mouser exactly on the curve, I want to just keep that curve exactly where it is in the graph editor, and I want to zoom in vertically on it so that this curve will get taller in the graph editor. But watch what happens when I do that. I'll control middle mouse click, and it moves the curve that I wanted to maintain. That's why I put my cursor there. That's what I'm expecting to happen, is to expand from the point that the cursor's at. Maybe there's a hotkey for that or a shortcut that I in the preferences that I can change. But it doesn't make any sense to me that you would move the screen. I guess it's always from the center of the screen. It doesn't matter where you're expanding it from. But even if I put this in the center of the screen, let's see what happens. I think see, it doesn't even happen then. I can't keep that line just right where I want it and zoom in on it. So help me understand that. What in the heck is going on there? Because it's so hard to go between different curves of different values, which is another thing in Maya. Like I can just go 1, 2, 3 to go absolute, normalized, or stacked curves. And I'm not entirely sure. I'm sure they have this somewhere. They have normalized here, but that doesn't seem to do the same thing. I don't really know what this is about. Those are kind of the main barriers I have. And then inserting a key is similar to Maya, where I can go in here instead of, I really don't like the hit I and then I have to choose the stuff. It's just so many button clicks to get to a key. I have auto key turned on, which is great, which is interesting that the difference between Blender here is if there's never been a key on something and you have auto key on, it will create the first key for that thing. Let me see if I can recreate that. So if I move this, it should set a key. This already has keys on it. Maybe it isn't a good example. And so, yeah, this is a different kind of, so this is the transforms not for the thing I have selected. I have to, which is weird because in the channel box, as soon as you select something in Maya, you get to see exactly the thing you have selected. Because why wouldn't you want to see the thing you have selected? That's why you're selecting it, because you want to change it. But for some reason in Blender, you kind of have, again, it's this management thing where I guess go to the armature. This is where it is, but it doesn't automatically take me there, even though what I'm selecting is part of the armature. If I have something else selected, I don't know. It's just, I feel like they need to divide when you're in pose mode. Like, what's the point of having a mode if we don't have contextual changes to the sidebar menus? It feels like a lost opportunity. If you're going to go to the effort of having a mode for posing, why not also make it contextual to, hey, obviously I'm in pose mode. I want to see the transforms that I'm changing, and maybe that's another shortcut or something. I don't know. But so there's that. So that already has keys on it. Let me find something that doesn't have a key on it. So this doesn't have a key on it, but if I change it, you can see all these are locked except for this axis. So if I move this, it doesn't set a key on it, but it did earlier. If I do this, okay, so that's another inconsistency. So if I rotate it here, it'll set a keyframe, but not from here. So I can't explain that one. That was a new one for me. I'm just, every time I touch something, I'm having to like take in the whole screen and try to figure out what just happened, because it's usually not what I expected. And there's these inconsistent moments like that. I'm blaming my kind of mediocre animation on not knowing Blender. It's very convenient for me. I might just continue animating in Blender so I can keep having that excuse on having mediocre animation. I'm sure someone's watching this getting very frustrated that I just don't know what I'm doing. But that's kind of the point, I guess, of this video. So yeah, managing the camera. And then the backplate thing was a bit confusing because there's no way to have this on the, let me find the camera. I have the camera selected. Oh, I'm in pose mode. I got to get out of pose mode. Maybe. Okay, now I had to toggle off of that and then back on, and then I get the camera icon here. This is what I was looking for, but it wasn't showing up until I deselected the camera, then reselected it. So if I'm in pose mode, oh, but I can't go back into pose mode because I don't have something selected. So if I'm in pose mode and I select the camera and then I go to object mode, the camera option does not pop up. I have to deselect the camera, then reselect the camera, and then now I get the camera option. Okay, this is the background image that I can see here, but I couldn't find a way. It's either entirely behind everything or in front. This may not be an issue. So behind, I couldn't find like a depth plane. Like in Maya with the image plane, there's a depth, so I could, choose a point to cut it off. Yeah, this is the area where I was talking about the shadow catchers earlier, where you can really, this is really nice. You can easily add this as a shadow catcher or turn this as a viewport, or we could turn it as a holdout so I could see underneath, I guess, and it block whatever else was underneath it. Some great stuff in terms of like Blender has a ton of great assets that are available. I know there's a ton of great tutorials, but I'm a new father and I don't have time to watch hours and hours of tutorials, and the Maya experience is not transferring super well here. And I just get to the point where I'm so fatigued from trying to figure out how to do stuff that I can't actually put my energy into the actual animation. That's the frustration. What keeps me from coming back to Blender, I think. I'm going to keep trying. This was not planned at all. There is a Spider-Man advert on the bus that's passing by as I'm doing this animation. But this is what I came up with the animation. I was fairly happy with it. This took me one night. I was like, let me just try to see as much as I can do in a single night. And this is what I came up with. For the render, I used cycles, and this was about 4 minutes per frame. I didn't touch any sample settings or do anything special. I just wanted to see out of the box what it would do if I just start throwing stuff at this, and it took 4 minutes a frame to render this, which is kind of surprising because it's only rendering a very tiny portion of the screen. Of the CG elements, it's only just a fraction of the screen, but that took 4 minutes a frame just to render this little guy here. Everything else was empty from 3D objects. So that was kind of interesting that took so long. It makes me also want to maybe try to pursue bringing Blender animation back into Maya to render in Redshift, or trying Redshift inside of Blender. I think I just haven't installed it yet for Blender. The other thing that was interesting about this is I tried to track this shot originally in Blender and just ran into so many other issues there as well. It was easier for me to kind of teach myself Synthize and use a whole different other program in that sense. For me, it's still kind of a love-hate relationship with Blender. I want to love it, and there's times when I just hate it and I don't understand why they would do the thing they're doing, but I can appreciate, obviously it's a free software, open source, all that kind of good stuff. So it has some amazing capabilities that I can't even tap into because I'm just not that experienced in it yet. But I hope to be in my limited time. So please comment below all the frustrating things that you're probably watching this and saying, oh, just hit this button or just do that. Let me know in the comments, maybe even use a time code and let me know, hey, at this moment in the video, you should have been doing this or that. I'm always open to hear feedback to how I can improve, especially using Blender. Now, I'm sure there was some other things I ran into last night when I was working on this and I can't remember, but that's generally the gist of the things that come to mind that I ran into, having to just basically manage a bunch of things that I'm usually not having to manage inside of Maya. I can see the incredible potential here, though, that I think for someone who does kind of master the software a bit more, that the ease of use will allow them to put their energy directly into the animation that I wasn't really able to, because I was just having to manage my time managing the software as opposed to just keying and getting in the flow state of animating and keyframing. And so I'm sure there's a ton of hotkeys and shortcuts that would have been helpful, but of course I wouldn't have had the muscle memory to do that since I'm not using Blender very much. So that's kind of the limitation for me, I think, in working in this and one night a week or something, that it'll be a bit of a long road, I think, unless I can really devote a lot of time to get muscle memory into this. Since I've never worked in Blender professionally, and I've never been asked to or required to, no studio I have ever worked at has chosen to have Blender as their software. So I've never had to animate in Blender, and only ever get into it just because of the cool stuff I see posted online from people using Blender. So I hope my perspective has been illuminating as someone who's been teaching and animating inside of Maya for professionally the last 12 years and trying to open up Blender and get something out in just one night. So I hope this has been entertaining, if nothing else. Thanks for watching.